Hi, Julie Jones from SSB Performance, Smarter, Stronger, Better Mindset Training. Here with this week's Mindset Mid Simple Tip of the Week, brought to you by Game Day Sportswear. This week, we're talking about our memory. Can you trust your memory, or do you need to build a better system? Well, there's more time than I'll never get back in my life, because I have replayed one moment, well, maybe a couple moments, but at least one moment from our league semifinal a few weeks ago, more times than I care to admit. Back to rec league baseball we go. And yep, you guessed it, we did not win. We lost in the semis. We lost 9-8, bases loaded, top of the seventh. My play on repeat wasn't the only reason we lost the game. We know this, right? In a one-run game, there are dozens of moments that matter. We left runners on base. We didn't execute perfectly in every situation. There are probably 10 other plays that could have gone to a different direction that would have changed the outcome. But this one has stayed with me because it was completely preventable. Earlier in the inning, our center fielder, who really wanted to be the shortstop, so he'd like to come in the infield as much as possible, had come in to back up second on a throw, and that's something, they do all the time. But the problem was that after that play ended, he never moved back to his normal depth, and I didn't notice. My attention had shifted to something else. We're talking through strategy. We're watching another part of the field. We're thinking ahead to the next hitter. We're talking about making a pitching change, darn pitch counts in baseball, and doing all the things that coaches do during a game. Then, almost as if the baseball gods wanted to teach us a lesson, the very next hitter hits a rocket over the kid's head. 2-run score. Remember, we lost by 1 run. But as I drove home that night, I wasn't thinking about whether we should have called a different pitch or made a different substitution or anything like that. I kept thinking about something much more simple. I didn't have a system. Well, I started out with a system, but I didn't follow my system. I didn't stick with it. Had I simply, between innings, said, hey, Brad, you check on outfield positioning, or hey, Brian, you keep your eyes on the base runners, or Bear, you keep the pitcher's head in the game. I'll focus on hitters' tendencies and some other things. Someone almost certainly would have noticed that our center fielder was out of position. Instead, we're all looking at the same thing, doing the same thing that our players do that drive us absolutely batty. Not because suddenly we would have become smarter coaches had we made a better decision, but because we would have become more intentional with our attention had we had a system. This reminds me of something I talk with athletes about all the time. Pressure doesn't make us forget what we know. Pressure exposes whether we built systems that help us remember what really matters in moments. Fast forward a couple days later, I found myself watching my son in a swim meet, and the same lesson appears in a totally different setting. As I watched him prepare for his race, or really not prepare for his race, I realized he doesn't have a consistent warm-up routine. Drives me batty. Sure, there's a few things he does behind the blocks that I'm all about. He does a little bit of breathing, closes his eyes, does some visualization. But everything leading up to that point changes from meet to meet, or race to race, or whatever. Or he does nothing, or he's over there eating snacks. I don't know what he's doing. But then I start thinking to myself, he also needs reminders to brush his teeth before bed. He needs reminders to take his trombone to school, which he does every day. And when he's watching the neighbor's dog, he needs reminders to close their darn garage door before he leaves, because otherwise they're not home, right? But if we're honest, we all need these kind of reminders. How many times have you walked into a room and forgotten why you're there? I mean, I do this all the time. How many times have you left something at home or missed an appointment, forgotten a birthday, walked away from the house wondering if you actually closed the garage door? The problem usually isn't that we don't care. The problem is that we're asking our brains to do something they were never designed to do. So this cognitive psychologist named Nelson Cohen, he was one of the world's leading researchers on working memory, reminds us that the focus of attention is limited in capacity. In other words, our brains can only actively manage a small amount of information at one time. And pressure, fatigue, emotion, distractions, all the things that go on in competition, the pace of the competition, in all those things, our capacity shrinks even further. Suddenly, it's easy to understand why coaches or players miss a defensive adjustment, why athletes skip part of their warm-up, or why parents forget to send a permission slip to school. Duh. We do this all the time. These aren't character flaws, as Michael Jackson sang in the 80s. It's just human nature. Do you remember that song? You may not be old enough for it. But that's why I love something productivity expert David Allen wrote years ago. Your mind is for having ideas, not for holding them. Think about that for a second. Your brain is an incredible problem-solving machine. It can create, analyze, adapt, teach, coach, the whole 9 yards, innovate, but it's not meant to function as a storage unit. That's why high performers build systems. One of my favorite books is called The Checklist Manifesto by a surgeon named Gwande. In it, he describes how experienced surgeons, pilots, engineers, and other professionals continue to make preventable mistakes. Not because they lack knowledge, but because complexity overwhelms their memory. His conclusion is simple and incredibly powerful. Under conditions of true complexity, checklists aren't a crutch, they're necessary. I couldn't help but think about that after the semifinal. I had systems for a ton of other things in baseball and in my life. I didn't have a system for directing my attention between innings. But that can change, not because I will try harder the next time, but because I know better and I'll prepare differently. One of our brain's most fascinating features, the reticular activating system, or RAS for short. We've talked about it before. It's our brain's filtering system. It's like an executive, sort of assistant. This, every second, decides what information gets our attention and what gets ignored. The amazing part is that it takes clues from us. If we intentionally tell ourselves what matters before competition, our brain becomes much more likely to notice these things during competitions. This is why written reminders work. That's why routines work. This is why assigning responsibilities work. We're not simply creating a checklist. We're programming our attention. A few years ago, the night before the championship game, I talked Portland State softball head coach Meadow McWhorter through a brilliant system, it was her idea, of writing little reminders in the margins of her scouting report. She wrote down what she needed to do, what she needed to say, how she needed to feel, how she wanted to show up. Breathe, stay aggressive, trust your first read, great body language, be the calm, whatever it was. She wasn't writing those reminders because she didn't know them. She was writing them because she understood something that every great performer eventually learns. Pressure has a way of making us forget what we know. And the older I get, the more I realize that I am really a creature of habit. Most mornings they look remarkably similar. I eat the same food, strawberries, blueberries, a rodeo bagel with some peanut butter and jelly or some other healthy spread one of my former players got me. I start my morning in much the same way, and I follow routines that have become almost automatic. Some people hear this and they think boring, only because I am. But I think it's liberating. Every routine I automate frees my brain to think about something more important. The same principle applies to coaching, parenting, leadership, teaching, competing. The goal isn't to remember more. The goal is to remember less because you build a system that remembers for you. So here's a simple question I should have asked before the game or before the season or whatever. Where am I relying on memory when I should be relying on a system? Maybe it's creating a pre-performance routine. Maybe it's assigning responsibilities to your coaching staff between innings. Maybe it's writing reminders in the margin of your scouting report. Maybe it's putting a sticky note on your computer, setting an alarm on your phone, creating a checklist before every competition. Whatever it is, stop assuming you'll remember. You know what happens when we assume. Design a system that helps you succeed when life gets busy and pressure gets higher. Because championships aren't usually won by the person with the best memory. They're won by the person with the best preparation. And sometimes the most powerful preparation isn't another hour of practice. It's a simple system that helps you notice what matters most. Build a system. I love systems. I need to use them more often because when I use them, I am better. And I bet you are too. So, food for thought for the week. Who's going to watch your outfielders? That's the question. If you want to build a system for your team to manage the mental side of the game, Julie J at ssbperformance.com. Let's build something that works as a system for you. Until next week, have a great week or not. The choice is yours.